Think payroll's boring? Today we're going to prove it's anything but. This is Behind the Button. Welcome to Behind the Button, the podcast that really lifts the lid on what goes on behind the scenes in payroll. I'm Laura Murphy, I'm the CIPP's content editor, and I'm delighted to be joined today by a payroll professional many of you watching or listening will already be aware of. But did you know that he's also a comedian? He likes to sing, and he is now a published author. Welcome to the show, Max. Thank you for joining me today.
It's wonderful to be here, Laura. Thanks for having me. I've travelled all the way to London, especially to be here in this very room with you.
Amazing. And thank you so much for being with us. So, Max, on Behind the Button, we like to ask our guests to leave a parting question for the next guest. So I'm going to put that to you now, and you've got a really good one, and I'm actually really intrigued to hear the answer. So, if you weren't in payroll, what do you think you'd be doing, or what would you like to do?
I'd like to be one of those dress-up persons at Euro Disney.
Yes.
To entertain the kids.
Yeah.
That's what I would love to do if I wouldn't be in payroll. But I guess that won't really fund the family. But that's at least what I'm trying to do if I once reach retirement. That's what I would love to do. And the more serious answer would be, I would probably work in HR.
Okay. I like the first answer, and I definitely can see you doing that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Which character would you dress up as?
Well, I would love to be Belle from Belle and the Beast.
Amazing.
But that might be challenging. So I might play the Beast then.
Oh no, Max. We'll go with Belle. I prefer Belle.
Okay. Right.
So thank you for joining me today. As I mentioned at the start, you have numerous accolades under your belt and many more that I didn't mention in the intro. But when we were looking at guests that we wanted to get on the show, I thought of you, Max, because of your passion for payroll, which you're wearing the jumper right now. It is your organisation and your website. So I wanted to speak to you really about where that passion for payroll came from, what sparked that initial flame for the industry.
It's a wonderful question. I'll tell you the origin story of passion for payroll, maybe. I was working for Shell at the time, and we were doing a global payroll strategy meeting, and we were talking about the purpose of payroll.
Yeah.
And I was in a room full of finance people, HR people, legal, and a lot of other functions. And I may have been one of the only people who really understood payroll. And I stood there explaining to them for about an hour how important payroll is and what our purpose is. Yeah. And the IT manager sat back and looked at me, Max, you really have a passion for payroll. And that's when I realized, geez, I really have a passion for payroll. And then you start to rationalize why you have a passion for payroll.
Yeah.
And I think for me, as I was going through the underground to be here in the studio with you, I saw an analogy between the underground and payroll and Wi-Fi. I think we are one of the most important infrastructures in the world to keep the world spinning. We make sure everyone's personal finances work by paying them on time accurately and compliant. We fund governments with their single most source of revenue, income tax and social security. We fund benefits for the employees, but we also, for over 60%, are responsible for any corporate finances. Yeah. And that's all wrapped around a function that builds trust, just like the underground, where you need to get to work and you trust on the underground. And you trust on your 5G network or your Wi-Fi. And if it doesn't work, that's when you highlight the importance of that specific function or area. That's what payroll is to me. Every day you wake up realizing how important it is. And you can't do that without passion. You can't work all those long nights, finish all those reconciliations, wait for HR to finally submit their inputs on time without a true passion. And that's what drives me.
Yeah, I love that, Max. And I love how you found an analogy on the journey here. Yeah. I think, everyone working in payroll is hugely passionate about what they do because, as you rightly said, it funds people's lives.
It does.
It enables people to pay their mortgages, to put food on the table, and it really is that important. The other sort of point I wanted to come to is around the younger generation. So we have a lot of discussions at the CIPP about how do we get the younger generations interested in payroll.
Yeah.
Do you have any views on how we go about doing that, Max?
Well, first of all, it kind of strikes me that we're not part of the younger generation anymore, which is kind of true. So we're talking about Gen Z, right? But also Gen A. So our kids, 8 or younger, my son turned 6, they are Gen A, Gen Alpha.
Yeah.
If we focus on Gen Z a little bit, based on my research, they are very purpose-driven.
Yeah.
Right? They want to make sure that they belong to something and they want to see the bigger picture of what they're doing. So in order to get them into our profession, I think we need to do more storytelling.
Yes.
And get them to understand the beauty of payroll. I once said, payroll combines the best of all professions. So if you don't know what to choose payroll. But that's outdated because we don't want them to choose payroll just because they don't want to choose anything else.
Yeah.
They choose payroll because they want to have it all. It's the best of HR, finance, tech, and all of that. And it is relevant in terms of, what I've just said, governments, authorities, but you touch people's lives.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you love AI and if you love tech, you need to be in the payroll space. I once managed a payroll of about 80,000 employees, and each individual employee had about 1,500 unique line items on a monthly basis. Just multiply it and see the vast amount of data that you have at your disposal. And I think if you really want to build a community and find your purpose, you find payroll people. Because you and I know, you've just been at a conference. I've went to a lot of conferences. If you want to feel welcome and if you want to have a community that supports each other, it's payroll professionals.
100%.
So if you want to have a sense of purpose, Gen Z's listening, come to payroll. You'll have the best of tech and all of that. And you will also make new friends in the payroll profession. So the question is not if you should join payroll. The question is, why shouldn't you join payroll? Because I would have a hard time finding an answer to the last question.
I think one of the things that, I really see about the payroll community in my role is we do all pull together. And let's be honest, at times payroll can be complex. Things are always changing. We have to always keep our eye on what's going on outside of our department. But I think, like you say, that networking, that community, that's what makes payroll such a nice industry to work in.
Yeah, and we need to change that narrative, because traditionally we've always been complaining.
Yes.
Oh, the legislative changes are too late. Oh, HR is too late. It's too complicated. We need to work hard hours. That's not how you promote a profession.
No.
So to change that narrative, we need to show the beauty of payroll. For people attracted to sales.
Yeah.
They see commission payments, they see big cars and driving revenue and being very important to a business. What they don't say is that you have 1,500 cold calls and you get turned down 1,499 times before you get that one win.
Yeah.
That's not how they advertise sales. Why are there maybe more financial accountants than there are payroll people? Sorry, accountancy is not one of the most sexy professions, is it? But still people get there because they tell a story of what it is like to be an accountant. And that's, I think, where we need to change the narrative and where we need CIPP support. And you are driving that narrative change. So I think that's what we all need to do. Anyone's listening who works in payroll, change the narrative from, oh, it's so hard, it's so complicated, to no, this is the beauty of payroll.
The beauty of payroll.
Yes.
I think we should start using that more when we're talking about the profession. So, Max, you love to make people laugh and smile. I know in your keynote speeches, comedy plays a big part in that. And when we had our first ever call, you didn't say hello to me. You actually sang it to me. So I really want to hear about how comedy and music have influenced your career in payroll.
Yeah, what did you say? Music was my first love and it will be my last. And in between is payroll.
Love that.
So I can't stand The Sound of Silence, although it's a beautiful song by Simon and Garfunkel, but I can't stand The Sound of Silence. So I will always have music on if I'm not on a call. I love music, all kinds of different genres. And for me, the comedian part is that we need to release some of that pressure of payroll.
Yes.
And I try to be the voice of reason of payroll, of how it actually works beyond the slide decks that AI will revolutionize everything. It probably will, or that we will all be automated. Because I still see people behind their desk with an Excel spreadsheet open, trying to hit that deadline.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to touch the lives of the actual payroll professionals. So a day in the life of a payroll professional. And for me, humor and fun is a big component because we go to work, well, whether it's from home or in an office, more than we see our spouses or our family.
Yeah.
So we don't want to sit behind a desk and then be boring. We want to make it very fun and engaging. And for me, I've always managed teams with a joke.
Yeah.
Even I once made a joke that I didn't really appreciate. And I called the team together and I said, I'm so sorry, but the bank file got disrupted. So we need to prepare ourselves for loads of questions tomorrow. And then I dropped the silence and they said, are you for real? I said, no, of course not. We did all the hard work and we made it happen.
Yeah.
But sometimes a little bit of a joke releases some of the pressure. Or when people complain about others like legislators or HR, usually HR or other folks out there, I say, well, we're also not without flaw. And why don't you just pick up the phone and talk to someone and make a joke, say, hey, do you have a clock? Do you have a watch? Yeah. Why are you always submitting timesheets late?
Yeah.
And that kind of releases some of the pressure instead of complaining, make it a bit more fun and engaging. That's what I aim for.
So obviously we've talked through sort of your passion for payroll, which leads me to an amazing thing that you've done this year, which is sitting on the table in front of me, which is the Global Payroll Managers Playbook, which is amazing. I've read through it myself, and I mentioned to you before the session that I really like the way that it's broken down into different components. You could use it as a start from scratch, start to end of the book. You could use it that way.
Yep.
But also, if you're not sure about a certain area, you can go back to that specific component and look just at that. So one of the really big questions I wanted to ask you was, how long did that whole book take to write? So from the initial idea right through to it being published and available?
Yeah, just a minute. It was easy, right? We have AI doing this now. No.
You did not use AI to write that, I can tell.
No. It's genuinely, Max, you could probably hear that
Yeah.
In the tone of voice. No. So it maybe taking a couple of steps back. The reason why I wrote the book is that there isn't a book.
Yeah.
At least there are payroll books out there, and shout out to everyone. But for me, when I became a global payroll manager, and I've been that for the past 2 decades, there wasn't really a single source. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of education, but I didn't have anything on my desk to say, what do I need to do?
Yeah.
And I knew that I couldn't write a book when I was just 2 years in, but after 2 decades, I think I was experienced enough to at least share my view.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to write something to help and support the profession. And I wanted to do that in a structured way because payroll people love structure.
Yes, we do.
We do love structure. Maybe humans love structure.
Yeah.
Especially the payroll people. And having a framework that I first developed in 2015.
Yep.
So it evolved over 10 years. I first had 3 big building blocks. Then I had different components. And now I landed on global payroll strategy, governance, operating model, and delivery.
Yeah.
And that's what the book is centered around. That ideation phase to really firm up the 4 big building blocks and the 16 components it has, that took me 2 years.
Yeah.
To then finally write it took me 4 months. So I skipped a lot of Netflix, Disney Plus, HBO Prime, and all the other nights where my wife was on the couch looking at me like, are you at that book again? I didn't hear it because I had some nice music on with noise cancelling headsets.
Were there any sections that you struggled to write? Because as with everything, we'll have areas that we love doing in our roles, and we'll also have sort of tasks that we maybe don't love so much. So were there any of those components or building blocks that you struggled to write a little bit more than others?
Yeah, good question. And there were a couple that I struggled with. Maybe one of the most was technology.
Yes.
And the reason is because I also worked for technology companies, and I wanted this to be beyond the sales pitch.
Okay.
I wanted this to be something for payroll professionals to consider what type of technology is out there. And I needed to do a lot of research, especially on AI, because I'm not an AI expert, but I wanted to include what AI could mean for payroll professionals. And I noticed when I was writing it, the next month it was already outdated.
Yeah.
Because it evolves so fast. So I really struggled how to make it relevant enough 6 months later or 12 months later. So I wanted to convey general concepts, but also explain the uneducated reader. There might be HR executives or finance executives who are in a HR or finance or payroll transformation to say, what is actually a payroll engine?
Yeah.
What is a payroll platform? What's the role of robotic process automation? What's AI? And to nail that balance, which I hope I did, that was maybe the most difficult part of the whole book. And also writing the introduction.
Yeah.
How to write an introduction that engages.
Yeah.
That's actually super complicated. So that's the one that I wrote the last. And the last thing is a cover.
Yeah.
So a shout out to Mika. She might not be watching this because she's a designer, but she designed the cover. Because when I flick through movies you want to watch or a book you want to buy, the first thing you see is the cover.
Yeah.
But then don't read the book by its cover.
Yeah.
And therefore the introduction also needed to be spot on.
Yeah.
So.
No, I think you did a really good job in the technology section. I mean, AI, I've got a little bit of understanding, but I am by no means an expert. And I really loved how you broke down the different types of AI, because I think that's an area that a lot of people, myself included, get confused by. So I think you did a stellar job at that. And which sort of sections just flew out of you when you were writing the book?
So for me, it's the strategy part.
Yes.
Because that's where my sweet spot is. Because I also believe a lot of payroll teams do not have a strategy. Based on my latest own research with LinkedIn polls, only 40% has a payroll strategy.
Yeah.
Yet there is a big talk in the industry about we want to have a seat at the table.
Yes.
Well, we are sitting at the table. But if you really want in your business to have a seat at the table, how can you have that without a strategy?
Yeah.
And a strategy is not just something on a piece of paper, but a well thought through strategy with a purpose, with service delivery models, with some design principles that guide decisions. And I want to sometimes change the narrative from being having a seat at the table to being a table stake.
Yeah.
And a table stake means you're always involved with each decision, which doesn't necessarily mean you need to be at the table, but you are virtually at the table. And therefore, strategy for me, which I've always focused on, maybe took me about two weeks to write all the 4 components. So that comes very natural. And risk and control and compliance, that's also one of my sweet spots.
So I know a lot of people listening or watching today will be very well versed in UK payroll, but not necessarily global payroll. And certainly myself, I feel very confident and comfortable doing a UK payroll. But to be honest, global terrifies me a little bit. So what piece of advice, Max, would you have for somebody who's looking to take that leap from UK or one specialised country's payroll to global?
Don't do it. No. Of course, do it.
Yes.
Right? I might reverse it. I'm very reverse in Dutch payroll. I'm also certified. When I first did UK payroll, I'm like, what's a P11D?
Yeah.
What's a MET B1 form? What's pay as you earn? But what I've come to learn is if you know the payroll legislation and the process and the mechanics of payroll from one country, you almost know 80% of a payroll of any given country.
Yeah.
And that should give you some comfort. But then you should also be comfortably uncomfortable.
Yes.
So you don't know everything, but I'm pretty sure you will find the right answers. And global payroll is not about what you know, but about who you know. So if you want to take the leap of UK payroll, first of all, you have a big advantage. You speak English.
Yeah.
Not everyone does. So you will probably find your way in larger corporations who work globally. So you have that language advantage. There's also a cultural disadvantage because I've learned, Laura, if you tell me it's interesting, then I wonder, is it actually interesting if a British person tells me it's interesting? So there are a couple of cultural dimensions. But for the people listening who really know UK payroll, you can learn Dutch payroll. You can learn Egyptian payroll or payroll in India, because I've also managed all of those countries. But I didn't manage it just like I did the Dutch payroll or the listeners to the UK payroll, because you might not do it in-house, you might outsource it, therefore lean on partners to deliver the knowledge you need to actually manage payroll. So you need to know 80%, and at 20% you know enough to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to take the leap. You just need to find the right organization that trusts your ability. I once had a job interview actually at Crocs.
Yeah.
And at the time, I've only done 3 country payrolls. It was actually UK, Belgium, and the Netherlands. And that payroll had 15 countries. And our payroll reported into finance. And the financial controller asked me, you don't know these other countries. Why should I hire you? I said, if we expand to 10 more countries and I don't know those, would you fire me?
Good point.
And then he said, probably not. I said, no, because I will train myself to know you hire a person with transferable skills such as a business acumen, cultural awareness, accuracy, a partnership. That's who I am. And I happen to know payroll. And what I don't know, I will find out. And that's the mentality you need to have when you take the leap from UK payroll to global payroll.
And I think that's really reassuring, that the underlying principles are the same. Because I think with your book as well, Max, it isn't just applicable to global payroll.
No.
I think you can apply it to any payroll. There were certainly things that resonated with roles that I've carried out prior to coming to CIPP.
Excellent.
So I don't think that is just for global payroll managers. I think it's for every payroll manager.
Which makes me think I should rebrand the title. It should be the Payroll Manager's Playbook. I actually also had someone from Australia. He was texting me on LinkedIn and saying, well, it's a global payroll manager's playbook, but I only process payroll in Australia. Should I buy it? I'm like, okay, what should I say, right? I think yes. And for XYZ reason, he said, Max, I'll buy the book. I said, buy it, read it. If you still find it's not applicable to your scope, I will refund you.
Yeah.
And he happened to say, no, the concepts are more or less the same of what I need to do. I need to build a strategy here. I need to build risk and compliance in Australia as well.
What I really, really want to know is what's the most complicated payroll you've processed in terms of globally? So where in the world has had the most complex payroll?
Vive la France.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Is that just because there's lots of different legislation that governs how payrolls run, or are there certain nuances that just make it that bit more complex?
It's a lot more bureaucratic than you would expect in this day and age.
Yeah.
There was the introduction of DSN. My pronunciation is probably incorrect, but Déclaration Sociale Nominative, like the RTI, FPS principle in the UK, that was introduced there, but it's still very bureaucratic. The rules are relatively unclear. Leave and unpaid leave, statutory leave is very complex. The accruing of pay periods, the accruing of holidays, the settlement rules, the social security, which spans across 2 pages. A typical French payslip is 2 pages.
Wow. With
different social security bodies, with different limits. That has been very complex. Also, my neighbors, Belgium, has been very complex. The other payroll I might call out is India.
Yeah.
But India was also complex due to their income tax regulation process. But hey, payroll is complex in general, and we embrace it and we get it done. I always found it a challenge. Say, hey, I really now want to know how to calculate an ex gratia in France. So tell me the rules and regulations, because I think this is it, but it's an assumption, and the nuances are different. And by the way, you have all of these complexity indexes out there. And the UK is typically not in the top 10. However, if I would ask any given UK payroll professional if UK payroll is complex, they would tell me yes. But there's probably a little plug for you and the CIPP, because a body like the CIPP is here and you give a lot of guidance, it becomes less complex because they have a resource.
Yeah.
In France, for instance, that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
In the Netherlands, it also exists. So in those countries where it doesn't exist, it also increases complexity. So the UK professionals should be fairly proud of the CIPP being here, because of you, it is less complex, because you have more resources. You're even influencing HMRC on legislation.
Yeah. The work that we do at the CIPP, we are immensely proud of, and we're very happy that we have that relationship with HMRC where we can represent our members and the wider payroll profession to get legislation changed where it hasn't necessarily been thought out correctly. They do engage with us and they do make changes off the back of that feedback, which is amazing. I'm still stuck on the 2-page long payslip.
Yes.
How on earth do people get their head around that? I know in the UK we talk a lot about we want to educate people so that when they leave college and they go into their first job, they don't look at their payslip and it's an absolute minefield. So I wonder, in Europe, are there any initiatives like that where they're giving education around pay and pay slips to younger people?
It doesn't really happen, to be honest, and it should happen. I do know of initiatives in the US,
Yes,
where I believe it's called Money Matters, which is a beautiful marketing title, anyways. Money Matters, and I talked to the prior president of the Payroll org, Jim Bolek, and he actually went into universities and sat in front of the college people, explaining why a payslip matters, what a W-2 is. I think that's your equivalent of a P60, but also, maybe we need to rethink the whole pay experience, Laura. Because if I tell my daughter, you need to look at your pay slip, she thinks, what's a pay slip? Is it like a physical slip, or what is a pay slip? I think we also need to rebrand the pay experience to actually make it appealing to people to go to the pay slip, make it interactive. And I've finally seen some of the interactive pay slips where you could click on a certain component and say, hey, it's because of this policy, or your tax went up because your tax code changed in the UK. And by the way, we think your tax code changed because of this, or there is a student loan, and something that explains it.
Yes.
Right? To make the pay experience more welcoming. And then we get into the whole earned wage access discussion, pay frequency. But how to attract people to actually open up their pay slip? Maybe that's question number one.
Yeah, because I think, we are talking about how we educate people on their pay slips, but you've just touched upon a really important point. Lots of people don't look at their pay slips, which I am always mortified at. I'm like, but how do you know that everything's okay? And they say I pick up the same amount each pay period. And I'm like, but that doesn't mean that there could be something still off on your pay slip, and you need to be checking that, because it is your responsibility at the end of the day. So certainly getting people to actually open their pay slips in the first instance.
Or maybe it's just because the world trusts payroll professionals that they don't open it.
Yeah. So with global payroll, what are the biggest changes you've seen over the last sort of 5 to 10 years?
That's a big question.
It is. Sorry.
No. I'll probably answer in twofold. One of the biggest changes has been that other countries are following our example. The Dutch had the RTI/FPS initiative in 2006, the year when I started Payroll, the digitization of governments.
Yes.
I've mentioned DSN in France. Mexico has done it. You have eSocial in Brazil. Of course, you have RTI, FPS that is still has its challenges. But hey, if you see it where we came from or where we are today, it is super relevant. And I think governments have been appreciating the importance of payroll as a source of revenue, but more so as a source of data.
Yes.
I've counted the unique number of data elements in a Dutch payroll tax return per employee per pay period, which is now 172. I can tell you only 100 of those are actually needed to calculate payroll and to produce a payslip. They have just used payroll as a vehicle to submit digital data to governments for them to run their politics on and their decisions. And that has been a huge shift globally from paper to digital because they see the value of payroll.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing I've seen. The second one is finally people are recognizing that there isn't really a one-size-fits-all, which I know is an oxymoron, but I always love saying a one-size-fits-all. I think the one-size-fits-all is hybrid. So a lot of people focus on we just get one vendor or one system to process payroll. But there's a recognition that if you have a payroll of one employee in Colombia and a payroll of 10,000 employees in the UK, that requires a different approach.
Yes.
If you have one employee in Colombia, you're not going to hire a second employee who is a payroll professional to pay that one employee, including themselves.
Yeah.
You're going to outsource it. You might not even want an entity. Whereas with the UK payroll, if you have 10,000 employees, you might just get payroll software and run it in-house. And that nuance is back into payroll to say, hey, there's not just one solution out there. Let's focus on what the business needs and then map a solution towards it, which could still be one provider, but these days people do a more hybrid payroll strategy. And there's a recognition there.
Yeah. And all of that is covered in the book as well.
Of course.
Talking about the different sort of models that can be used.
Yep.
And I think I already know what the answer to this one is going to be. But sort of what do you think the next biggest change will be in the decade to come? And I'm guessing it's going to be something to do with AI.
Yeah, and I'm going to flip it. I'm not going to mention AI, but I'm going to mention the role of the payroll professional.
Okay.
Because in my career, which is maybe only 20 years, I've been scared of automated time cards.
Okay.
I've been scared of integrations, of smart payroll software, of APIs, application programming interface, smart interfaces, robotic process automation. And the headlines have always been, you'll be replaced.
Yeah.
Yet we are still here.
Yeah.
But we are here because we adapted and we acted on and embraced new technology. Yes, maybe some of us, will get impacted by this. That's life. We may need to rebrand. But I think just the role of the payroll professional, that's what will change. And yes, AI will drive that. And there might be in the next 5 years another version of AI. Who knows? Or another technology. But for me, payroll will always be a people's business. Yeah. Unless AI and robots take over and there's no one left to pay. But I think governments will then intervene because they are kind of wanting people to get paid for a source of revenues because it's hard to claim income tax from a robot.
Yeah.
So I'm more focused on the role of the payroll professional and how that will change in the newest kid on the block, AI. And yes, I do think AI is more revolutionary than RPA or an integration. So it will impact us more. Mm-hmm. But I think the call to action to payroll professionals is be the change you want to see, unless you're overthrown by AI. So act now and adapt and upskill yourself on how you can use AI as a tool rather than be replaced by it.
We are always reassuring people in the payroll profession, yes, AI is here. It isn't going to replace you, but it will change how you work. And I think now is the time to start upskilling. So, when AI does take over some of the more repetitive tasks, you are then well placed to help strategically. And I think it will make payroll a much more fun place to be. Not that it isn't fun already, but I think, we'll be doing more value add tasks. So I think really AI will enhance the role of the payroll professional. And it's really important we spread that message.
It will. And at the same time, I also wonder, I always call it Renee. So Renee works in my office in The Hague, in a marble office, and I was working at Shell. And Renee was working longer at that company than I was alive.
Yeah.
And I was saying to Renee, now we're going to utilize our data and unlock the value of payroll data. And Renee looks at me, Max, I have 4 years left in my career.
Yeah.
I do not want to do this. I just want to do my work. Now, Renee since then retired, but there's also a lot of payroll professionals out there who like the repetitive work, who like the mundane work, who do not want to become a strategic advisor. And to those people, you say, hey, that's fine, but your work will change, whether you like it or not. So it will change. So if you still like the repetitive work, focus on doing it smarter. If you do not want to do storytelling to a CHRO, because not everybody wants that, then learn how to embrace AI by just delivering better results and even more accurate payroll. You can process more FTEs per payroll professional. If that's your focus, then focus on embracing AI. Otherwise, you are at danger, right? Because it will do more repetitive work. So make sure those professionals with that outlook also remain relevant.
Yeah. So we recently ran an initiative at the CIPP, which was all over LinkedIn, and it was making payroll personal. Yes. And you got involved in that, Max, which we were really happy to see. And I noted that you love Lego.
I do.
As do I. I do try and do it with my daughter, but I feel like I take over because I want it to be perfect. So you likened the process of building a Lego masterpiece to the payroll process. So could you elaborate on that ideology a little bit more for me?
So if you ever build Lego and you build it with kids, usually they want to build a house.
They do.
A house requires a wall. Now, if anyone knows Lego, the most famous block is a 4x4, an 8. Yeah. How you put those blocks together will shape the stability of your house, right? You need to do 2 and 2 in front and 2. That makes a very strong house. If you do that wrong, the house will collapse. That's just like payroll. And one block overlaps the other block. And that's how we work with HR. And we don't just sit next to them, no, we overlap with them. If we then take the other block, we overlap with finance. We take another block, we overlap with the tax authorities. So if we overlap with each other and embrace the other functions we touch, we build a very strong foundational house. And that's how the payroll process works for me. And that's how it relates to Lego.
Yeah. So my final request of you really, Max, is could you give our next podcast guest a question that you'd like me to ask them?
What would be a different name for payroll if payroll wasn't named payroll?
Oh, I like it. I don't know how I'd answer that.
Me neither. That's why the next guest would need to enlighten us.
Yeah, that's
because
a really good
payroll
question.
is like, it's a payroll as if it was still a role.
Yeah.
Right? HR is not a human resource, it's people experience. Everyone gets a rebrand. We're left out. So the next guest will need to give us a rebrand. Although that means a lot of name changes in the industry.
Yeah.
But hey, might be worth it.
It will be worth it. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Max. I really appreciate you coming to speak to me, and I really enjoyed the analogies, the song references, the chats about how we get people involved in payroll. I think it's been amazing, so thank you.
Thanks for having me and being a wonderful host, and kudos to the CIPP for organising a great podcast. So thanks, Laura, for having me.
If you enjoyed today's episode, hit subscribe or follow Behind the Button on your favourite podcast app. And if you're watching on YouTube, tap the like button, drop us a comment and make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We've got lots more great guests coming up, sharing their stories about life behind the button of payroll. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.